So today what I'd like to talk about are what I'm going to call tableau building games. Now, tableau building games are games where you are going to get a set of resources or cards or tiles or tokens, and they're going to be sort of arranged in front of you. You're going to accumulate more and more of them as the game goes on, building up your own sort of personal area or your own personal tableau. If you like this style of game, then one of the ones that you might want to take a look at is Martin Wallace's London. London is a game where you're going to be building up your own buildings, your own pieces, your own sort of areas and districts of the city after the Great Fire that destroyed that magnificent place. During the game, you're going to be drafting cards, and then you're going to be playing those cards down into your personal display so that you can build up the city. Then you're going to be able to have the opportunity to use your buildings so that you can gain victory points and other various effects. The cards in the game are all going to do something for you. There's some different colors. For example, many of the blue cards that you see here, an example called the sewers, these are cards that are going to help you when you run your city or activate your personal display, your tableau, which is what we're talking about. And they're going to help you either by helping you reduce your poverty in the city, because as you're trying to rebuild the city, you're also trying to find work for people, help them find places to go, jobs to do, etc., etc. And so some of these cards are going to help you accomplish that and deal with the problem of poverty. And anytime you see these little white cubes on the cards, for example, you're going to have the opportunity to reduce your poverty. You'll also notice on the cards that there's always some kind of a price, which is located in the top corner, and that price is what you're going to have to pay in order to play the card to the table. In addition, London has another neat little effect where every time you play a card into your personal tableau or your personal area, you're going to have to discard a card from your hand of the same color. So you might have a handful of awesome cards, but you're only ever really going to be able to use half of them. This leads to some really fun decisions in the course of the game. So, in London, on your turn, what you're going to do is the first thing is you have to pick a card from the display. So let's say, for example, that I want to try and make myself a little bit of money. I might pick the Haberdasher's card. The Haberdasher's card is going to cost me nothing when I play it, and when I activate that area of my city, I'm going to gain 4 pounds. So I'm going to take that card and put it right into my hand. The hand of cards that you have is very important because this is what you're going to build your tableau with. And as I said earlier, for every single card that you expend from your hand to build your tableau, you have to discard a card of the same color to the display. Let's take a closer look at this card, Shops. Not only is this card going to be good for me because when I run my city or activate my tableau, I'm going to gain 2 victory points, seen in the hexagon at the bottom, and also reduce my poverty, but every time I place a card into my personal display, my tableau, I'm going to gain a pound. So I'm going to take this card and I'm going to place it into my display. In order to do that, I'm going to have to discard a card of the same color. So I'll take my workers' houses and discard that over here to the display. Next, I might want to play this police station. This is a fun little card. It's going to cost me 2 pounds in order to play it. However, it's going to, the police are going to kind of roust out the unfortunates in my neighborhood and push them to someone else's. So it's going to give someone else some poverty. I'm going to try to be shedding the poverty throughout the game that I have, so I'm going to put that into my personal display. In order to do that, though, I'm going to have to discard this pink card. The interesting thing that happens here is when I discard, if this tableau up here is full, this is where you have to select cards from, then you're going to have cards that are going to flush off to make room for the new card. When cards are flushed, they're all going to be removed from the top row, as you see here, and then the cards in the bottom row will be moved to the top row. Next, the card that you needed to discard in order to play is going to go to an empty slot. So over the course of many rounds, you're going to be building up this personal tableau that you see in front of you. And then when you wish, you can actually activate all of these cards or some of these cards. This is called running your city. As you activate the cards, you're going to take the benefit that you see, and then you're going to flip the card to its reverse side. I'll activate this card, gain 4 pounds, and then there go my haberdashers. They're busily working away in the new shops that were built in London for them. The police force will activate, and then we'll send some poverty along to someone else's neighborhood. The train station will allow me to take $2 from each borough that I occupy south of the Thames River, and that's then going to flip there. So once you've flipped all your cards, what do? You start building your tableau all over again by placing new cards on top of any cards that you've already played. London is a fascinating tableau building game. The tension in the game, the reason it's so enjoyable, it comes from a multitude of different places. Trying to manage your poverty, represented by these little black cubes, is a crucial part of the game. Trying to manage your finances is very important and often quite difficult, as you try to always be sure you have enough money in order to play the cards that you wish to play. In addition, building up your city, deciding how large you want your tableau to be. During the game, you can create a very small one, like you see here, or you can create an extremely large one, up to 10 or 11 cards. All of these decisions have to be made. All of these things have to be balanced. And of course, it wouldn't be a Martin Wallace game if you couldn't also have the opportunity to put yourself into crushing debt. So managing all of these factors, building up your regions of the city to score points, scoring points off of cards, all of this is what makes London a wonderful tableau building game. So let's say you're intrigued by this tableau building genre, but you're a little bit intimidated by London. Seems like there's a little bit much going on between the integration of the cards that you're playing and the board position that you're trying to build, and the poverty and the debt and everything else that goes along with it. Let's say you want to try something a little bit lighter. This would be a great step back. This is a game called San Juan. This is a game for 2 to 4 players, though I would argue it plays best with 3 to 4 players. And this is a game in which you are going to be selecting roles up top here in order to perform actions, in order to build up your personal display. The goal being to have the most victory points at the end of the game by the time somebody's display reaches a set number of cards. So the rules here are quite a bit simpler than in something like London, but the gameplay is very, very engaging. So let's take a quick look. San Juan is a card game, and there's many different types of cards within this game. A lot of the game revolves around what are called production buildings, and that's because the economy of the game is cards. So instead of having money, you're going to have a hand of cards. And every time that you want to play a card to your personal tableau area, you're going to pay the cost that you see in the upper corners of the card in order to play it. What's the currency? The currency is other cards from your hand. So once again, just like London, where you have to decide every time you play a card, you have to discard a card of the same color, here you don't have to worry about color, but you do have to worry about the number of cards. So let's take a look at some production buildings. This is an indigo plantation, and this is a tobacco storage card for a tobacco plantation. Both of these cards are going to generate cards for you, since cards are the currency of the game. However, the tobacco storage, as you can see here, is going to net you a much better payoff than perhaps the indigo plantation will. And that's through the use of these nifty little market cards. So, for example, every time a sale is made at the market by using what's called the trader action, which we'll take a look at in a moment, you're going to be able to draw cards for every card that you have placed on top of your plantation. So here's a third way in which the cards are used. By placing a card on top of a plantation using what's called the producer phase or the producer role, you're then going to be eligible to sell them later. When you sell them, you're going to draw as many cards as you see on this little tile. And the price will change, just as a market would. So here, indigo is always going to get you only 1 card, but tobacco at this market will get you 2 cards when you sell. Here, it will only get you 1. So, over the course of the game, you're going to build the tableau in front of you. And by the end of the game, you're going to be totaling up the victory points that you see at the bottom of all of these cards to determine who the winner is. In general, purple buildings, like you see here, the smithy, are either going to give you some sort of an in-game benefit, or they're going to be providing victory points at the end of the game, like the hero statue over here. It has no effect, however, it's going to get you 5 victory points at the end of the game. So during the course of the game, you're going to be selecting roles in order to play these cards, in order to produce goods on top of your plantations by taking cards and placing them face down on top of each of your plantations, and then selling cards using the market that I just showed you in order to gain more cards, which will allow you to play more cards until the game is over. Here we see the role cards that are crucial to the game. On your turn, you're going to have the opportunity to select one of these tiles, which is a role that will allow you to do something in the game. So for example, the builder action is going to allow you to build a building. Everyone else is also going to be allowed to build a building, however, by you selecting that role. So sometimes you have to think about that. However, every one of these roles also has a privilege, and this privilege is a special bonus that only the person who selected that role is going to get. So for example, I can build a building, but I'm going to pay 1 card less if I select that role. Everyone else has to pay full price. I could also select the producer role. This is going to allow everyone to be able to produce 1 good on their plantations by placing a card from the supply, not their hand, face down on a plantation. However, my benefit or privilege is that I can produce 1 additional good. So by selecting that role myself, I'm going to get to actually produce in 2 of my plantations instead of just 1. The trader is where you're going to be able to sell. The counselor is going to allow you to draw more cards, sort of digging for something that you're looking for. And the prospector is an interesting card because the only thing that happens is you and only you get to draw 1 card. These roles will cycle through every round as everyone picks a new role. Every round someone is going to be the governor. And that person has a couple of little bookkeeping duties to do, but they also begin the round, and so we'll get first pick of all of these roles. So if tableau building sounds like a lot of fun to you, and London seems like it might be just a little too complicated, then a fantastic step back would be the game of San Juan. Once again, the tension points are trying to balance your economy of your production buildings, which gain you cards, which allow you to play cards, and then deciding what cards to build, what direction you kind of want to go, whether you want to build lots of monuments or whether you want to build other buildings that are going to give you great in-game effects, is a real crucial decision point in the game. The market economy is interesting and varied, and the role selection adds quite a bit of tension to the game. So if you're looking for another great tableau building game, but perhaps a little bit of a step back, I'd recommend trying to find yourself a copy of the great game of San Juan. Let's say that you tried London and you found it to be great fun, but you were looking for something a little bit meatier, something a little bit deeper, a little bit more challenging. Well, that's going to be found inside this fantastic little cigar box that I had to use for a wonderful game called Pax Porfiriana. That's the next step that we're going to take a look at. The game of Pax Porfiriana is rather difficult to explain, but for those who are willing to persevere and learn the game and get through some of the rules complexities, you're going to find a game that is almost infinitely replayable and offers a huge variety of decision points in the tableau building genre. Every player in the game is going to be a personality, and there are 6 different cards here, all different personalities that you could be in the game. And each of these is going to be assigned to a player. Players then each have colored cubes that they're going to use as their own personal markers. Now, the colored cubes in this game are not only used to mark cards, but they're basically, most importantly, used to show your income. Every colored cube on a card denotes $1 of income. For each cube you have, you're going to gain that much income at the end of every turn. each roll that you see is also going to grant you some sort of specific ability or power. So let's take a look at this card here. For example, this is Francisco Madero, and he's going to allow you to buy plantation cards from the market for half of their cost. And it also shows down here that he has the potential to flip and turn from a loyal follower of Diaz to either outrage over U.S. intervention or perhaps tilt towards revolution. And this is one of the key aspects of the game that we'll take a look at as we go. The game also has the government cards. And these cards represent the different types of government you could be under during the game. So, you could be under Porfiriano's regime, you could fall into anarchy, you could fall under U.S. intervention, or perhaps martial law. Each one of these is going to show you a different economy. So for example, under Pax Porfiriana, you're going to have an economy of $3 for every card that you sell. It's one of the actions that you can take. And every one of your mines is going to produce 2 cubes of income every turn. Under anarchy, things are much less stable, so your economy is going to change drastically. Under U.S. intervention, your economy is going to be boosted for your mines because, let's face it, that's what the United States was most interested in. So during the course of the game, the players are going to have the ability to change governments, which can be very crucial as well. The game also works through a market. There is a market of cards that's going to be available to the players on every turn. So basically we're going to have 12 cards that are available. And the cost to take one of those cards is shown on this chart. So the card that's been around the longest is, available to be taken for free. A card that has just come into play is going to cost you $16 in order to play it. So during the game, it's quite simple. You're going to take 3 actions. You're going to discard any headline cards. These are yellow cards that you might see in that card display. And then finally, you're going to refresh the market, and then you're going to take your income. Sounds simple? In many ways, mechanically it is, but the gameplay is rich, varied, and quite complex. So here's an example of some of the tableau building that you'll find in Pax Porfiriana. So here we are again as Francisco Madero, and I am living under the Diaz regime, but I could be tempted to go towards either revolution, or I could try to advance my own power and position by feigning great outrage over U.S. influence in my country, even though all the while I'm profiting from that U.S. intervention in my own personal economy. Here we see some examples of cards that you could have in your tableau. For example, here we have a water project. We have a dam. This dam is going to provide income according to the number of Chihuahuan ranches that you have in play. So not only is it important to play a card, but it's also important to know which region the card is from, which is going to be shown in the lower portion. Here I have a mine. This is the Twin Buttes mine. And under the Pax government, that means I'm going to gather 2 cubes of income, or $2 of income, every round from that mine. This is an example of what we call a partner card. And the partner card is going to give me some sort of a game effect that's going to help me, or help my income, or help me buy cards or purchase cards, or protect me from other cards that can be used against me in the game. You'll also note that some of these cards have this circular symbol that has a word such as loyalty or command or revolution. These are points of influence, if you want to think of it that way, or the way in which your particular hacendado is going to be leaning, either loyalty towards Diaz or perhaps towards revolution or perhaps towards outrage at U.S. intervention. And so during the course of the game, you're going to be trying to accumulate as many of those kinds of points, all hopefully in the same type of category, so that when a special card comes up in the game, such as this one, which is called a topple card, you're actually going to be able to take the chance to overthrow Diaz and take over control of the country yourself, thus winning the game instantly. There are a myriad of other cards in the game, such as this partner card. These cards can be played against an opponent or perhaps on yourself, and depending on the way in which you use them, you can flip them and orient them to give you either loyalty points or perhaps revolution points. There are orange cards that can be played. These don't go to your tableau, but what they do is they actually steal money from your opponent, and the number shown in the red circle shows the unrest that you create in your opponent's area, in their tableau, in their region, and this is going to prevent them from gaining any income from those cards. However, when you play it against an opponent, it gives them a point of outrage. Create anarchy? You just created outrage, and this outrage can be used by your opponent to overthrow Diaz and win the game. So you have to be very careful how you use these orange cards. Black cards in the game, such as this card, are going to allow you to do different things as well. These are direct attack cards, and so they're going to allow you to take something away from your opponent. Perhaps it will allow you to steal some of their troops and convert them to your personal army. Perhaps it'll allow you to trash someone's industry. When you do, however, be aware you're giving them a point, something that could help them later. So these cards, very powerful, but have to be used judiciously. We also have yellow cards, or headline cards. These are cards that are going to change the government, and they can either be played to do that, and you then can force your opponents to either discard all their blue cards or all their green cards. And there's different colored symbols for each of these cards. Sometimes you'll have to choose between two other colors in your tableau, or you can simply discard the card without effect if you're worried someone's going to use it against you. Finally, we have troop cards. These are a special kind of card that you can play. Troop cards do need to go to a specific province, in this case Chihuahua. But what these troop cards can do is you can use these troop cards to protect your own mines or your own plantations or whatnot. Or, of course, you can send them to, quote-unquote, protect your opponent's mines or ranches, you know, just to help them out a little bit. Doing so, however, will often give them a point. So, for example, a point of command here, if you give that to your opponent, they're now going to have that. But you will be kind of extorting them and collecting some of the income that that ranch or that mine or what have you makes as you protect your neighbor. So there's just so many different ways in this game to interact with your opponents, whether they be the kind of black assassination or attack cards, whether they be the orange cards that will directly go after your opponent's money. There is a ton to think about and do in this game. At the end of the game, if Diaz has not been overthrown during the course of the game by one of the topple cards that we showed before, then what's going to happen is the player who has the most money is going to be the winner. So if you like tableau building games and you're looking for something that might be a little bit more interactive, something that is a little bit more complex and offers more choices, more richness in decisions, and offers a variety of endgame conditions, then Pax Porfiriana might be the game for you. It's also worth noting that when you get the game Pax Porfiriana, the game is entirely cards, but there's a lot of them. You will play with only a fraction of this deck every time you play the game. And so one of the things that's very intriguing about Pax Porfiriana is that there's an almost infinite amount of replayability in this small deck of cards, in this small little box with some wooden cubes and some plastic tokens. So if you're looking for that next great game, Pax Porfiriana could be for you.